If one, oh, be quiet. If one buys cattle for peace offerings or a non-domestic animal for meat consumption, the hide becomes not holy, even though the hide exceeds the flesh. Sealed jars of wine in localities where they are sold sealed, the jar becomes not holy. Nuts and almonds and their shells become unholy. Grape residue wine before it has fermented, it may not be brought with mice money. After it is fermented, it may be brought with mice money.
Yes. So just to bring home this point, because we didn't do this together yesterday, um, the the animal, since the animal is being bought as a whole animal, you can't buy an animal without its skin, but you're allowed to buy an animal for with Maaser Sheni. So after he's skinned it, the skin is chulin. He doesn't have to do anything special with it. And the same goes for sealed bottles of wine. One, because he has no choice but to buy the wine in a bottle. Therefore, the bottle goes to chulin once he's used it, which will contrast to the coming Mishnah. Um, and the similar thing with the nuts. You can't buy if they can't buy the almonds without the shells. Then
Yeah,
once you shell them, the shells are kulin, and you can use them for kulin purposes.
right.
Okay. Now contrast with the Mishnah Daled.
By the way, you can't buy an animal without its skin because it has to, right? Correct? That's what you said. Can,
Correct.
someone said to the butcher, "I want a half a cow." Okay, can he cut that cow in half with keeping the skin on, and then give it to the guy?
And weigh it like that. As long as it's that's the normal way of doing things, I guess.
Mm.
We're talking about our Mishnah is talking about where he purchased a whole living animal.
Animal, right, right. Okay, all right. Dalid. If one buys a non-domestic animal for a peace offering or cattle for meat consumption, the hide does not become non-holy. Open or sealed
So
jars of
pause. So pause.
pause. All
So
right,
now
become
this is
non-holy.
so over here. First of all, buying a chaya for shlamim. What's the first thing that stands out to you about that? What's wrong with
Um,
that sentence?
buys a whole cow
No,
for
not a cow. A chaya.
a chaya. I don't think you can a chaya
That's
goes
correct. You
right,
can't put them on the mizbeach.
right, right.
Okay,
Okay.
so that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, if he buys a behemoth which can go in the mizbeach, but he just buys it for personal eating and not for taking onto the mizbeach. Okay. In either of these cases, Chachamim punished him. They gave him a knas. Said,
Uh-huh.
first of all, for the chaya, you can't. That's a silly mistake to try and bring that as a shlamim. So therefore, and the behema, which you could have brought as shlamim, so you're in Yerushalayim anyway in order to eat this, and you failed to bring the shlamim. So then they made a knas on him to that the hide remains of the Maaser Sheni, and he would therefore have to sell it and use the money again to buy more
More.
to buy more Maaser Sheni. Okay. Same thing goes for the coming cases.
Open or sealed jars of wine, where they are sold open, the jars do not become non-holy. Baskets of olives and baskets of grapes together with the receptacle, the value of the receptacle does not become non-holy.
Okay. So here are things that are purchased open. So he could have taken the wine, bought just the wine and put it into his own container, but he bought it with the container. See, if it's sold open, then he has the option of taking and putting it into his own container. So now
Mhm.
he's using or if he buys them sealed in a place where the minhag is to sell open wine, then he's choosing to use his Maaser Sheni money to include the container. So
Ah,
now that container does not become chulin afterwards.
right.
He's kept it as it stays with Maaser Sheni. He has to sell it and use the money to buy some more Maaser Sheni. And the same goes for the baskets of olives and grapes that he bought with the kli. The kli he didn't have to buy the kli with it. That was unnecessary, and therefore he doesn't get to call the kli chulin afterwards.
Well, if one buys water or salt or produce attached to the soil, or to produce produce which cannot reach Jerusalem, he has not bought Misa. If one bought produce in error, the money must be returned. If wittingly, it must go up and be eaten in the place. And when there is no temple, let it rot.
So yeah, the original Maaser produce gets redeemed, but if he uses Maaser money to buy more produce, that can't be redeemed again, and therefore it has to be taken to Yerushalayim. And if it won't reach there, then it must be left to rot, and he just can't do anything about that further.
So we're saying we can only redeem it. We only redeem it with that money once, and then after that,
you can only redeem it once. Correct. Okay. Continuing, Mishna Vav, halokech behema. So if somebody if somebody outside of Yerushalayim redeemed his Maaser Sheni produce and he used that money to purchase a behema. Okay. Shogeg, if he says, "Oh my gosh, I just gave you," he says to the seller, he says, "I just gave you money that was Maaser Sheni. I didn't realize it was Maaser Sheni." So now, what's the din? Yachzeru dameh halim koman. So then the seller must give him back his money, and the behema goes back to the seller. It's a complete mekach taus, and the whole thing gets reversed. And this would be enforceable by Beis Din. Mazid, however, if he knew that this was Maaser Sheni and he deliberately bought a behema with his Maaser Sheni money, now he has to take that animal to Yerushalayim and shecht it there and eat it there. So that's now his knas is now he's got the tircha of schlepping this animal to Yerushalayim. V'im ein mikdash, and what happens if there's no beit?
He just froze. You
money
froze.
to buy a behema, and he cannot. Then he's.
You just froze.
Am I back with you?
Yeah, you froze.
And now?
Now
yes,
you're
I understood. Now I'm okay. Okay. So if there's no mikdash, now he's got a problem. He can't do anything with the animal because it's Maaser Sheni. He's not allowed to redeem it again, and therefore the animal must be left to die, and it needs to be buried along with its skin. He gets no benefit from it. Okay. Mishna Zayin. En lochim avadim ushvachos v'karkaos ubehema tamea midumei Maaser Sheni. Things that you cannot buy with your Maaser Sheni money. You're not allowed to buy money. You're not allowed to buy, slaves or female slaves, land, or non-kosher animals. Horses or any other work animals, donkeys, from this money. And if he used his money on these animals, then he has to take more money out and of the same value and declare that to be Maaser Sheni and go and eat with that.
Would that be the same with the slave? The value of the slave?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Ein mevin kinei zavim kinei zavos v'kinei yoldos chataos v'ashamos midmei Maaser Sheni. All these korbanos, what's the common denominator between all of them is that they're not eaten; they're burned. Okay, so therefore he is Maaser Sheni must be eaten. That's the ikar avoda of the Maaser Sheni, is that it must be eaten. So therefore, or even the chatas. So even the chatas, which is eaten by the kohanim, but it's restricted only to the kohanim, and he doesn't get to eat any of it. So and the asham is the same, from Maaser Sheni money. But im hevi yochal kenegdan, and if he and if he did, once again, he has to take more money out of his pocket to the same value and turn that into Maaser Sheni.
Okay.
Let me just see if there's anything. I'm just looking at the commentary just to make sure that and he explains over here actually that any korban that is a chova, that is a requirement, you did a certain chait, now you have to bring this korban. You're not allowed to use the Maaser Sheni funds for that either, because that's something that must come from chulin. Because a person cannot, because once it's a chova, explains Kahati, it's a debt, and you can't repay a debt with Maaser Sheni either.
Right. So Sheni is very specific in what its purpose is.
Yeah, and so the two different parashim. I gave you the one that said that. So there was one parish is that you can't repay a debt, and the other parish is, as I explained earlier, that the chatas is only eaten to the kohanim, and you can only use your money to spend on korbanos that are eaten by the baalim. Okay. This is your general rule is your general rule is anything that you purchase that is not edible, cannot be drunk, and cannot be anointed, if you spent your Maaser Sheni money on that, then you have to take more money out of your pocket and turn that into Maaser Sheni. Okay.
Because those are the
Mhm.
things that you're bringing. Those are the produce you're bringing. And if you don't want to bring it, you want to exchange it when you get to Yerushalayim. So you can only
Mhm.
exchange for the same kind of thing, food for or drink or produce.
Yeah.
That's what it's saying here. You can't do it with something else.
Um, so I didn't get your point. Say that again, please.
He can't when he redeems the food or the drink or the produce in where he lives because he doesn't want to schlep it. And it says I use my
Right.
sheni to buy. He can only use it for those same things.
No,
Food.
he can buy any kind of food in Yerushalayim. But it just has to be edible or anointable.
Right. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be if he didn't want to bring a sack of potatoes, but he doesn't have to buy a sack
Yeah.
of potatoes in Yerushalayim. He could buy carrots or whatever he wants.
That's
But
right. He can buy whatever he wants. As we said, he can buy a behemoth.
right,
Right, a
right.
behemoth isn't naturally Maaser Sheni. You don't make Maaser Sheni off a behemoth, but since he can eat the behemoth, he can eat the chicken, whatever it is, that's fine. He can use that as Maaser Sheni.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Perik base Maaser Sheni nitzan la'achila v'lishtia l'sicha. As we just saw before, Maaser Sheni is intended for use for eating, drinking, or anointing. Specifically, we're talking about olive oil here. Le'echol davar shedarka le'echol, but only for eating something that's normally eaten. V'lasuch davar shedarka lasuch, or to anoint something that is normally anointed. Lo yasuch yain v'chometz. He is not allowed to take wine or vinegar and use from his Maaser Sheni and anoint with that, because that's just not a normal thing to do with wine or vinegar, even though he personally might like it. About sachu es shemen, but olive oil is fine for anointing. Furthermore, you're not allowed to spice the oil. The pitum is to add different spices to the oil of Maaser Sheni. Now, why can't he do that? Because the shemen that gets absorbed into the spices is going to go to waste. Okay, because that's not going because the spices themselves aren't going to get consumed, and therefore whatever gets absorbed in them is wasted, and you're not allowed to waste Maaser Sheni. But
So
in look,
the flavor that goes into the food or whatever it is,
into the
because
food is 100%.
but it's not for you.
Right. If you, in general, you're going to be eating when you spice food, you eat the spices. But
Right,
with the oil that he's going to be anointing himself with,
right.
that's not going to work so well. Not
What if he uses the olive oil for food?
Yeah, if he uses it for food, actually, so interesting. The other Mefarshim say that the reason why you can't put the spices into the oil is because it actually it denigrates the taste of the oil, and therefore he finds that you find that you're doing that it's some measure of wastage of the oil,
You're lowering its value.
lowering its value.
Right. Okay. All
Okay.
right.
And you're not allowed to purchase spiced oil with Maaser Sheni funds. Aval, he is allowed to spice wine, because the spiced wine all does get drunk and it is improved. Okay. So what happens if honey or other spices fall into the wine, and improved it? Okay. Hashvach lefi cheshbon. Now, what happens if so now he has this wine that was worth a certain amount of money before. Let's say Kahati gives the example where the wine was previously worth 2 dinarim, and the dvash and the honey and the spices were worth 1 dinar. And now they fell into the mixture, and the mixture now it has improved, so that the wine is now worth 4 dinarim. Okay, so now the value add over here is 1 dinar, because the whole mixture before the sum of its parts was 3 dinarim, but now it's worth 4 dinarim. Now, since the value of the wine was 2/3 of the original mixture, you following the math here?
I'm trying. Okay. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so the wine was worth 2 and the spices were worth 1.
Right.
Okay, so it was 2/3 of the original mixture,
Right.
and now it's improved by a dinar. So now we therefore say that the shvach, the improvement of is 2/3 of the is 2/3 from the wine and 1/3 from the chulin spices that fell into it. And if you want to redeem this, okay, you have to do it with 2 dinarim and 2/3.
2 dinner and 2 thirds.
Okay,
Okay.
because 1 1/3 is chulin, 2 2/3 is Maaser Sheni. Okay, so that's the calculation that you'd have to do if you wanted to redeem this wine. Okay, now when would you redeem the wine? Why would you be able to redeem the wine? I think we're going to come up to cases later when it would be possible to redeem it. Or maybe it's not even a redemption. It might be in a b'diavad case where you have to compensate for a loss of the wine or something like that. Okay, so that's for that's the calculation of the value of how much of it is Maaser Sheni. Okay. Similarly, dagim shenis bashlo im hakaflotas shel Maaser Sheni. Fish that was cooked with kaflotas is it's a kind of a cabbage. Okay, which is Maaser Sheni cabbage, and the taste improved. So the same applies over here, that you do the calculation of the original proportions of chulin versus Maaser Sheni, and however much it's improved is pro rata.
I have a question. It says in the notes, it says if honey or spice of chulin fell into Maaser Sheni wine outside of Yerushalayim and increased in value, it makes a difference outside of Yerushalayim if he has the spices in the wine that fell into. Why outside of Yerushalayim?
Why outside of Yerushalayim? Where did you see outside of Yerushalayim?
In the notes, it says, however, one may spice wine with after that. If honey or spice of chulin fell into Maaser Sheni wine outside Yerushalayim and increased its value, that of the wine, the increased value is according to its proportion. Then it mentions
interesting. Where do you say you've got outside of Yerushalayim inside your notes there? I don't have that. Oh, there it is. Right, because so let's say let's say he had wine that was Maaser Sheni, and he was bringing the wine itself, so he could still redeem it. Right. That's why it could be, because he could still redeem it at this point. That's why, because it's Chutzir Yerushalayim. So now that explains our case. Okay, very good.
Good. Okay.
All right. So then that's the dagim. Okay. Issa shel Maaser Sheni she'afar v'ishbicha. Now, what happens if you have a dough from Maaser Sheni? So he had wheat, which was Maaser Sheni, and he made a loaf of bread, and he baked it. But he baked it with wood that was chulin. Okay. So now you've got the value of again, let's say the dough was worth 2 dinars and the wood was worth 1 dinar, and now the baked loaf is now worth 4 dinars. Hashvach l'sheni. In this case, the entire thing is Maaser Sheni. So now, if he wants to redeem it, he needs to take 4 dinars, not 2 and 2/3, because the addition of the wood is considered negligible, because it's not actually part of the mixture. It was just a side.
Right. Froze.
Am I back now? Yes.
You're back now. You left the words at the side, and the size of and then it stopped, right?
Okay, so had I explained the piece about the Maaser, about the dough that was in the oven that was baked with wood?
But yeah, you stopped right after that, right?
Right, and the entire thing becomes Maaser Sheni, because the contribution of the wood is considered negligible. It's not part of the mixture. So even though it was wood fired, wouldn't have baked without the wood. It's not considered part of the thing. So here, and the Mishna sums up: Zeh haklal, kol sheshvach o nikar. Anywhere where the benefit is noticeable, it's where it comes from a piece of chulin that you can see is now part of the mixture. Hashvach lefi cheshbon. Then the improvement is done pro rata. And if the improvement contributed by the chulin is not recognizable, then the entire improvement is attributed to the Maaser Sheni. That was the case of the bread in the oven.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Fine. Masros Gimel Vav.
I'm sorry, wrong book. Roofs are exempt even when they belong to a courtyard, which is liable. A doorway, portico, or balcony counts as a courtyard. If it is liable, they are liable, and if it is exempt, they are exempt. Cone-shaped huts, watch huts, and summer huts are exempt. Genesaret hut, even if there are a hand mill or poultry in it, is exempt. A potter's hut, the inner hut is liable, but the outer is exempt. Rabbi Yossi says whatever does not serve as a summer dwelling and as a winter dwelling is exempt. The festival tabernacle on the festival, Rabbi Yehuda says, declares it liable, and the Kakamans declare it exempt. From a fig tree which stands in the yard, one may eat one by one and is exempt, but if together it is liable, he is liable. Rabbi Shimon says one in his right hand and one in his left hand and one in his mouth. If he climb to the top, he may fill his lap and eat.
Okay.
Okay.
Shemos Dalet Ches.
Okay, let me just put a note check here. Okay. Dalet Ches. But no, don't lose my tissue here.
I promise I won't.
No. Okay, check that. Okay. Hold on. I almost lost it. Dalet Ches. Okay. They just fell out. You have Dalet Ches? Why do I have something different? You have Dalet. I'm in Maaser. You said.
Shemos Dalet Ches.
Yeah, I put it over here. Okay, going backwards. Okay, here we go. Rabbi Yeshua says black figs annual white ones annul black ones, large fig cakes annul small ones, and small ones annul large ones. Round ones annul rectangular ones, and rectangular ones annul round ones. Reb Eliezer forbids. But Rakiva says if it is known what fell in, one does not annul the other, but if it is not known what fell in, one annuls the other. In which case, if there were 50 black figs and 50 white ones, if one black one fell in, the black ones are forbidden and the white ones are permitted. If a white one fell in, the white ones are forbidden and the black ones are permitted. If it is not known which fell in, one annuls the other, and this Rabbi Eliezer is stringent and Rabbi Yeshua is lenient. Good. But in this, Rabbi Eliezer is lenient. Right, yeah, in this, Rabbi Eliezer is lenient and Rabbi Yeshua is stringent. If one presses a liter of dry figs into the mouth of a jar and he does not know into which, Rabbi Eliezer says they are regarded as if they were separated, and those below annul those above. Rabbi Yeshua says they do not annul unless there are 100 jars. Okay.
Vav Yud.
Okay. Rain, which is given for fodder or for binding sheaves, and similarly stalks of garlic and bundles of garlic and onions are not liable to shicha. Anything buried in the ground, such as loaf, garlic, and onions. But Rabbi Yehuda says they are not liable to shicha, but the sages say they are liable to shicha. If one reaps at night and binds sheaves and the blind person, the laws of shicha apply. If he intends to take only the large ones, the law of shicha does not apply. If he said, I reap on condition that what I forgot I will take, he is liable to shicha. An olive tree that is a name in the field, even as in the Netofa olive tree is in its time, and he forgot it, it is not shicha. To what does this refer? To its name, to its performance, and to its place. To its name, that was shivkoni or baschani. To its performance, that it yields much. To its place, that it stands alongside a press and alongside a breach. And all other olive trees, 2 are shikha and 3 are not shikha. Rabbi Yossi says there is no shikha for olives. Okay.
Right. Negayim. Gimel Aleph.
Everyone becomes tamei from the Gayim except for Gentiles and a resident alien. A person, wrong way. Everyone is qualified to examine the Gayim, but declaring Truma and Tahara is in the hands of the Kohen. They say to him, say Tameh, and he says Tameh. He says, say Tahor, he says Tahor. Two the Gayim are not examined.
So you see that if the Kohen does, even if you have an expert who's the Israel, he needs to have some Kohen, even if they're like a 13-year-old Kohen kid who has no idea what he's talking about, and the rabbi can tell the kid, say this is Tahor, or say this is Tameh. And so ritually the Kohen has to declare it, even though he can accept advice from Israel.
No. Two Nagayim are not examined simultaneously, whether they are in one person or two people. Rather, the Kohen examines one nega and declares it confined and confirmed, or tahor, and then examines the second nega. We do not confine someone confined, nor do we confirm someone confirmed. We do not confine someone confirmed, nor do we confirm someone confined. However, initially or at the end of the week, when the Kohen confines the first nega, he may confine the second nega. When he confirms the first nega, he may confirm the second. When he confines the first nega, he may declare the second tahor, or when he confirms the first nega, he may declare the second tahor. We delay examining a nega on a bridegroom until after the 7 days of rejoicing, whether the nega appears on his body, his house, or his clothing. Similarly, we delay examining a nega on a festival until after all the days of the festival. A nega on the skin is confined tameh for as long as 2 weeks, and with 3 symptoms, it is confined tameh white hair. It is confirmed tameh with white hair, living skin or expansion. With white hair or living skin, either initially at the end of the first week, at the end of the second week, or after the nega was declared tahor. With expansion, either at the end of the first week, at the end of the second week, or after the nega was declared tahor, it is confined tameh for 2 weeks, which equals 13 days.
Okay.
The festivals, not declaring it on the festivals, and the 7 days for after marriage and all that's you don't want to ruin anything, or
right? Exactly. You don't want, because if it comes out tama, you're going to ruin the Simchas Yom Tov or the Sheva Brachas week.
Right. Okay. Base hay. He used to say, a boar cannot be fearful of sin. An unlearned person cannot be scrupulously pious. I'm sorry, this is wrong. The page is missing here. A bashful person cannot learn, and a short-tempered person cannot teach, nor can everyone who is excessively occupied in business become a scholar. Eventually, those who caused you to float will be caused... Let's skip. Okay, that's it. And in a place where there are no leaders, strive to be a leader. Okay. I didn't mean to get you excited there. Okay. He also saw a skull floating on the water. He said to him, because you caused the heads of others to float, others cause your head to float. And eventually those who caused you to float will be caused to float themselves. He used to say, the more flesh, the more worms, the more possessions, the more worry, the more wives, the more witchcraft. The more maidservants, the more lewdness. The more manservants, the more thievery. However, the more Torah, the more life, the more students, the more wisdom, the more counsel, the more understanding, the more charity, the more peace. One who has gained a good reputation has gained it for his own benefit. One who has gained himself Torah knowledge has gained himself the life of the world to come.
All right, and Yavamas. Test base.
These are the ones permitted to their Yavam, but forbidden to the husbands. A Kohen Gadol who betrotheth a widow, and one who has a brother who is an ordinary Kohen. A qualified Kohen who married a Kalala, and one who has a brother who is a Halal.
And he has a brother who is a Halal. So because he's not allowed to live with his wife, but if he dies, then his brother is allowed to do a Yibum to her because the brother is a Halal, and he's so he can marry this wife.
A Yisrael who married a Mamzeres, and one who has a brother who is a Mam.
And he has a brother who is a Mamzer. So that's all one case. So the Yisrael married a Mamzeres, which was Asa to him. Then he dies, but his brother is a Mamzer, and the Mamzer and the Mamzeres are allowed to marry.
A Mamzer who married the daughter of a Yisrael who has a brother who is a Yisrael. These are permitted to the Yavam, but forbidden to the husbands. These are the ones forbidden to both: a Kohen Gadol who married a widow and who has a brother who is either a Kohen Gadol or an ordinary Kohen. A qualified Kohen who married a Halal and who has a brother who is qualified. A Yisrael who married a Mamzeres and who has a brother who is a Yisrael. A Mamzer who married the daughter of a Yisrael and who has a brother who is a Mamzer. These are forbidden to both, but all other women are permitted to their husbands and to the Yavam.
See the difference between halfway in the first part of the Mishnah, it talked about a Kohen Gadol who had done Kiddushin to an Almana, but he hadn't lived with her yet. So therefore, the brother is still allowed to marry her. But if he had actually lived with the widow, then she becomes Asa to the Kohana because she's lived with a man who's Asa to her.
Right.
So then even her brother would not be allowed to marry her.
Secondary arayos by rabbinical decree. If a woman is a secondary erva to the husband but not to the yavam, she is forbidden to the husband, permitted to the yavam. If she is a secondary erva to the yavam but not to the husband, she is forbidden to the yavam but permitted to the husband. If she is a secondary erva to both, she is forbidden to both. She receives neither the ketubah nor ufrix nor sustenance nor worn out property. But their child is legitimate, and we compel him to divorce her. A widow married to a Kohen Gadol, a divorcee, a Kalutza married to an ordinary Kohen, a Mamzeres, a Nissanite married to a Yisrael, or the daughter of a Yisrael married to a Nissanite or to a Mamza, they receive their ketubah.
So an interesting contrast over here is that in the first part of the Mishnah is talking about Shnios Larayos. That's only Asa Derabanan. But she loses a Kesubah. She doesn't get paid out anything. She comes out completely empty-handed from being divorced. Whereas when she violates the Torah, for example, a divorcee married to a Kohen, they have to get divorced, but the Kohen still has to pay out a Kesubah. So it's interesting that the Chachamim made, because they didn't want people to take their gezeras lightly. So they made an extra stringency on a marriage that's Asur D'Rabbanan, in order to make sure that people wouldn't brush it off.
If the daughter of a Yisrael was betrothed to a Kohen, or pregnant by a Kohen, or waiting Yibum by a Kohen, or similarly the daughter of a Kohen to a Yisrael, she may not eat Truma. If the daughter of a Yisrael was betrothed to a Levi, or pregnant by a Levi, or waiting Yibum to the Levi, and similarly the daughter of a Levi to a Yisrael, she may not eat the tithe.
Now this is according to the Tana, who says that only a Levi is allowed to eat Maaser Rishon, which we don't hold lahalacha. We hold Maaser Rishon can be eaten by Israelim as well.
If the daughter of a Levi was betrothed to a Kohen, or pregnant by a Kohen, or awaiting Yibum by a Kohen, or similarly the daughter of a Kohen to a Levi, she may not eat Truma or the tithe. That's it?
All right.
I had one more. Why don't I have one more?
No, that's it.
I have Ches Aleph. That's what I did. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Not unusual.
Shkoyach.
Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow.
It's Hashem tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a good day.